take place from 1345. Well, from the Kyoto University of Advanced Science and from Hitotsubashi University Business School, we have Professor Nawa with us, who is going to be the keynote speaker for today. Over to you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Nawa. I belong to Kyoto University of Advanced Science and Hitotsubashi University Business School. He has been supporting me in a variety of ways, and as a part of a way to return back to him, I would like to make a speech. And as you can see here, the ethics management is the title of my talk. So implementation of the ethics to the management of the company is indeed the topic of today. In the last 5 years or so, I have been known as a purpose management guy. I always argue that we have to introduce the purpose to the management. I can tell that everyone has the purpose as a part of the management, but I realize that not many companies do not implement that, therefore, let's execute that, therefore. And since I've realized that ethics is quite important, for that I would like to give you a talk about that. So here you can see the CV, but I would like to skip that part. What you see here is the slide that I have been using when I talk about the purpose management. I have been using it for the last few years. In the left, you can see the 21st century, the MVV. I think it's a bit obsolete. What I mean by that is that the mission given from the outside or any division that sounds fine, and also the sort of values that you would see hanged up on the wall, or that something that you would see on the wall, they are all extrinsic. But what's more important is purpose, dream, belief. We have to change the MVV into PDB. To wrap it up in a nutshell, we have to make it like a tattoo. We have to make sure that they would become. We have to be intrinsic, therefore. These things are supposed to come out from the inside. So along with that, I have been speaking about the purpose, but purpose really is the kind of things that sounds like. And of course, it's important that we should have the things. If we have them, they are much better. But in order to execute them, what's important is what you use as a reference for the decision making, and what you use as a standard for actions. So rather than purpose, what's more important would be the belief. So I sound like a religious leader, but what's important is that you have belief to yourselves, or else the purpose is going to end up just a picture on the wall. In Japan, the purpose has become a boom. Together with the Cabinet Office, I've conducted analysis. You can see variety of words. The words like society, you see the word society in the center. They all sound good, but they are just the kind of things that sounds fine. I call it the forest of the purpose filled with flowers, but I believe this is not sufficient. So let's move on to the ethics. If I were to talk all about ethics, I wouldn't be able to finish up my talk in 45 minutes, but I think there are 3 perspectives to it. What we often see or hear is the ethics of Kant. It is more like the moralism. It is sort of like compliance. It's sort of like the rule that we should not use certain things, obligations. Of course, those things are quite important. On the other hand, opposite to that is something that gives you more freedom. My apology, I was supposed to show you this page, especially what you see here, the ethics or etica argued by Spinoza. Instead of being restricted by things like the God, what's important is that we live naturally. But the people would be out of control sort of way, and it is going towards the innovation. Aristotle wrote a book titled Nicomachean Ethics. 2 months ago, Professor Nonaka, who passed away 2 months ago, who used to be the teacher of mine, always make the students to read this book. And this is indeed at the basics of the ethics. What matters is the practice. And the key word for Aristotle is that his argument is the middle way. When we say we have to go with the middle way, it sounds half-baked. But actually, what's the most difficult is to always stay in the middle way. It's easy to go towards the left or right. But anyhow, in line with Aristotle's the ethics, I would like to talk about the ethics, if I may. Well, the people who are here are very keen to learn about the compliance, and of course, you have to make sure that you do apply the rules to make sure that you do not violate the compliance, which is quite important. But when you manage the companies, the compliance itself won't let you move forward because it acts as the brake. What's necessary here is ethics. Of course, if the compliance is about not doing bad things, ethics can be interpreted as doing something good. You can see many wordings listed on the right side, but in order to execute ethics, ethics would have to be engraved to the company philosophy. And at the same time, it would have to be intrinsic. It would have to be engraved to you. It's not supposed to be something that is instructed to you from the outside. That's the basics of the ethics. On the other hand, what about the compliance? It's all about the control. You have to conduct the police activities. You have to monitor all the time. But that alone would not be able to make the companies the better. Of course, as a safety net, you have to have the compliance system available. But as for myself, I believe that the essence of the governance would have to be the self-governance. And I may have to argue about this and talk about it with Kamizu-san, but I believe that that would have to be there within the company. I serve as the outside director for many companies myself, and well, I wouldn't want to be an outside director for companies that needs to be monitored all the time. I would be scared of looking at the newspaper all the time. It would have to be engraved to each individual working for the company. And ethics really indeed is quite important in that sense. So there is someone by the name of Dr. Nakayama, who is a lawyer who wrote the book titled Integrity, and he rephrased the word ethics into the word integrity. And I borrowed this diagram from his book. What comes down from the top is compliance, and what supports you from within you is integrity. And according to the argument being made by Dr. Nakayama. So I myself believe that the self-governance is the essence rather than governance. That's what I say with Nakayama-san. And financial FSA of Japan has started to mention one thing. Starting from year 2000 or so, the UK has started saying that the principle would have to be the key. They are going to start with the principle because they used to control the finance with the rule, but everyone is smart. Therefore, they try to look for the whole loophole for the rules from ups and downs. They try to break the rules. Well, with the AI, well, of course, it can be expected that people would be smart to break the rules. Therefore, they thought that instead of rules, what matters is the principle. We have to stick to the principle. So this idea had started from the UK and in Japan Financial Service Agency when it was directed by Modi-san 10 years or so ago. They had switched over to principle-based. Well, actually, the financial institutions are considered to be the kind of industry that requires the rules, but even in those industries, rules do not work anymore. Therefore, I think we are at the tipping point in that sense. Now, There are companies that act based on principle, and I would like to share with you about 10 companies that do that. There are 5 companies in the US, 5 companies in Japan. I hope that you look forward to seeing what sort of companies you will see here in the list. One, the Walt Disney that operates at the Disneyland. Of course, they do a variety of businesses, but let's take a look at their Disneyland business. In the Disneyland, they have 5 keys principles. It's quite famous. Therefore, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called 5 keys. Well, there are people who are working part-time as the cast within the Disneyland that they entertain us. Well, for 3 days only, they receive training, and then immediately afterwards, they are sent over to the Disneyland. And what they use there is this concept of 5 keys. SCISE is the name. 5 years ago, SESE, they didn't have the I, but from 5 years ago, they had additional alphabet I. They didn't really want to increase, but the sequence here is quite important. S stands for safety, safety first. You have to make sure that the safety of the guest at the theme park would have to be defended. And another one, the C, stands for courtesy. It's about the hospitality. That's the second alphabet. Let's skip I. The third one, or say the fourth one, that stands for shows that entertain the guest. And the last E, that stands for efficiency. That efficiency that you always care about upon managing your company. So they used to say that the SCSE was quite important, but 5 years ago, they had included the word I, the inclusiveness. There are challenged people, there are LGBTQ people as well. Therefore, you have to make sure that these people would be able to enjoy as well. Actually, there are some of those people who are working as casts as well. You have to. They decided that they are going to adopt the stance of the stance to them as well. For 3 days, cast would receive the training on them, and that's the principal management of the Disneyland.
Another famous one is Johnson & Johnson, our credo. Now, you may take this for granted now, but they have been saying this for 50 years. So at the top comes the customer or patient for Johnson & Johnson. So number 1 is the patient and the doctor, and then number 2, employees. So they have this order. And the very bottom will be the shareholder. Today, we see multi-stakeholder capitalism as a phrase, but Johnson & Johnson has been promoting this for 50 years. There is the very famous Tylenol incident. So, of course, customers' lives come at the forefront, and so there should be no hesitation. And so, although they were not at fault, they immediately suspended the sales of Tylenol. This is a very Johnson & Johnson-like principle. Google's principle, since its founding, has been don't be evil. Well, there was a company in Seattle that was said to be evil. Oh, which company would that be? And then if you become an evil company, I'm not talking about Amazon, by the way. There was another company, Microsoft. Of course, Microsoft is a great company now. But at that time, many people had criticized Microsoft as being destructive on their competitors. And so Google's credo is don't be evil. They have transformed this to you can do business without being evil. So rather than the don't, they have translated that into a more positive message. But don't be evil is a strong message that employees have stickers and like very much. And this is a really crucial point for Google because they have so much customer data. If they want, they can do very evil things. There is the Project Maven, which was very famous. So Pentagon project providing a drone to Pentagon. But the employees went on a strike saying that this goes against the don't be evil principle. So Google had no intention of doing anything bad, but drones are patrolling the society, monitoring everyone, not just bad people, but everyone. Employees said that this is going to make Google evil. And back then, the President Pichai had to declare that Google will not be doing business with Pentagon going forward. And so don't be evil is a very important principle for Google, and the employees are keeping an eye to make sure that the company doesn't become evil. Now, Patagonia as a principle is very famous, not bound by convention. Just because it's conventional, Patagonia will not do it. Patagonia will always pursue ethical management. And another company, this may be a bit surprising, is a McKinsey & Company. I was at McKinsey for 20 years. And you may think that McKinsey is doing some terrible things, but this company has two principles. One is client interest first. And you think, of course, it's a professional firm. Client first is a given for a professional firm. But the other one I like very much, obligation to dissent. Being able to dissent, to say, no, it's not a right, it's an obligation. This is something that is amazing. So if your boss says something wrong, you have to say no. If the customer asks for something that is not beneficial or to the customer or to the society, you have to say no. Even if the customer asks. People from McKinsey don't listen. But this is something that's tattooed in you, the obligation to dissent. This, I think, is a very important principle. So these are examples from American companies. Now, let me take the example of Japanese companies. Kyocera is very famous. President Inamori founded Kyocera, and Kyocera has the Kyocera philosophy. All the companies that Inamori-san was involved in has its own philosophy. So he founded KDDI, and KDDI has its own philosophy. What's very famous is the Japan Airlines turnaround. Japan Airlines went under Chapter 11, and when he was turning around the company, he developed the philosophy for Japan Airlines as well. Now, in the case of Kyocera, there are 34, and then it's very detailed. So it's into a book. I told him that it's too lengthy, that you will not be able to remember everything. But if you look at Kyocera, you know they have an amoeba-type management, amoeba-type organization. So basically, 10 people make up one amoeba. And if you go to Kyocera, you would see that they take turns within this 10 people group, and they read each section of Kyocera's philosophy in turn. And they don't just read it out loud, they discuss it, how they would apply this into their business or how they think about this. So there are 34 articles within the Kyocera philosophy, but because they do this on a day-to-day basis, they go through these 34 many, many times throughout the year. And it is not just something that you memorize and remember. Every time they encounter a difficult decision-making, they come back to this Kyocera's philosophy. As an outside director, I often experience this. What is most difficult is the gray zone. If it's white and black, it's crystal clear. So this is good, this is bad. That's very clear, right? So what you don't know is this gray area. You don't know which way to go. And in the practical sense, you're always confounded when you encounter this gray area. In McKinsey, you have the organization simulation. With regards to these gray areas, how we make decisions, what will be the axis of such a decision-making. And that kind of a practice is being conducted regularly. Otherwise, you will not be able to implement these principles. You wouldn't know how to utilize these principles. But in Kyocera, they practice this through these day-to-day activities, and that is the implementation of Kyocera philosophy. Next is Takeda. This is a company that's been existing for 200 or some years. Many pharmaceutical companies have a long history. And Takeda has Takedaism, made up of 4 aspects. The most important for them is integrity. Of course, this is a very important principle. It's very Takeda-like. But more recently, they have actually changed this. Takeda's currently owned, about 90% of the business is outside of Japan. And the president of Takeda is now, used to be a French president, and now the president is an American Korean in Boston, a female CEO. So this long history is great, but they actually introduced something new called PTRD on top of the Takedaism. So the former president, Christoph, who was president for 10 years, introduced this PTRD: patient, trust, reputation, and business, PTRB. So patient, again, comes first, of course. And this creates trust with the patients, with the doctors, with the nurses, with the family of the patients. So P&T, this is more of the psychological. And then this converts to reputation. So this is about branding. This becomes an intangible asset, the brand, the reputation. And then this comes to the business profit. So it's not just this beautiful picture, but there is a clear vision of how the principles can be turned into profit. And all the employees of Takeda must keep this order of PTRB in mind. Another company that I'd like to name is Kao, which has a history of about 130 years or so. So Kao has declared integrity as the only choice as one of the pillars of this company. And of course, you would say, yes, if you think about compliance, of course this is necessary. Integrity as the only choice. But this also makes it difficult for the company to transform. You need to become a bit conservative, and now they're being pressured by activists like Oasis. And actually, 3 years ago, the president became President Hasebe, and they actually added another aspect as tackling boldly. And so it might seem a bit confusing. It's difficult to be both challenging boldly and also to be conservative or to choose integrity always. Now, if you play golf, if you're told just to stay in this green fairway, but you also have to hit the ball strong, but you cannot stray from the fairway. So I'm not a good golf player, so I would often hit outside of the fairway. But Kao has been pursuing both, staying within the fairway, but also hitting the ball strongly. And they have been able to make headways. Now, another company is Kuradashi. It's a startup. It's not a long history company. It went under an IPO just in the past few years. Now, Kuradashi is a company that works on reducing food loss. And they're also a B Corp. A B Corp IPO is quite rare, but this was a company that succeeded.
Well, the important purpose, or say the principle for them, is to create a precedent. That sounds very ambitious because conservative companies try to stick to the precedent, but in their case, they are trying to create the precedent, which can be quite challenging. Of course, it's easy for you to do the things that is not precedented. That is unprecedented. But what's more difficult is to make sure that what you do new is going to be the precedent for the future. If you do anything in a half-baked way, that would not be so. So it is sort of similar to the not bound by convention, that principle of the Patagonia. They had embedded that same principle onto their own company in a different way. Another company is the Recruit. You may be worried about me putting this company just like McKinsey, but what I like about them is that they have this message called bet on passion. They are saying that I am going to bet on your passion. Because if you do not do things fine, and then what you are not supposed to depend on to the seal of approval of your supervisor or the government. You have to bet on your own passion. It is quite intrinsic. Another company is Santry. I didn't mention them on the PowerPoint, but they have this message called Yatte Minahare, just do it. Well, my friend Ninami-san, he is the head of the Santry. When he started saying that Yatte Minahare is going to be the principal, I thought that I thought that that is too much, but at the Minahare, actually, the question that is posed against the employees. Well, instead of providing guidance to the employees, what matters is that each individual would have their own reference upon making the decisions. Those are the principal management of the companies. Now, let's take a look at this list titled The World's Most Ethical Companies. Did you know that? They have been around for the last 18 years. Actually, only companies that have volunteered would be chosen. The companies would be chosen out of the companies that volunteer. Actually, other than Kao, none of the companies that I've listed are part of the list because they know that they are the ethical company. They don't have to be approved by this list. I see many suspicious companies that volunteer to have themselves chosen in this list, but in the last 18 years, there have been some companies that have always been around within the list, such as Kao. Another company is Aflac, the life insurance company in the U.S., which has a bigger business in Japan. These companies have been in the list in the last 18 years. Kao has been winning this credential in the last 18 years. And as I mentioned before, Kao had always been arguing that that the integrity is the only choice. But as I mentioned, from 3 years ago, they also had adopted being courageous as a new rule. President Abe thought that they would be. The last year was worrying that whether Kao would be able to win another one in the last year, but his company was able to do so, and his company had been able to push back the activist shareholders. Companies like Unicharm and also the Takeda and pharmaceuticals that I've talked about. There is one episode that I would like to share with you about the Takeda pharmaceutical. Takedaism has been around since the Tokugawa shogunate period, where the integrity is the most important, but there are other things like the fairness, honesty, and perseverance. First and foremost, I was helping them trying to disseminate this message throughout their companies in the world. And the most difficult other part was the perseverance. Fukutsu is the original Japanese word, and fukutsu shows that you have a strong determination. And we thought that the perseverance was not sufficient enough to show that determination. Therefore, here is what we did. All the employees of the Takeda pharmaceutical had been asked to take a picture that represents the perseverance and had been asked to post a photo on Instagram. And this is one of the photo. Do you see the grass growing out of the concrete? that shows the perseverance that had been taken by the Australian the male employees. And this was awarded the gold prize. Well, they had spent 6 months, and all the employees spent 6 months to look for the scenes that represents the perseverance. And through that process, they had been able to look for the creed, and find the creed that represents the perseverance. So we try to figure. This is one example that shows the struggles that we went through in order to disseminate the perseverance and Takedaism that has been around since the Tokugawa, the shogunate period. But 3 years ago, the new president, French person, had taken over, so no more. Now, when I was arguing for the purpose management, I usually use this one slide page, and there are 3 things that we do. First, do you see 3 stars at the right top side? That is what we call MTP, which stands for Massive Transformative Purposes. Well, at the massive transformative purposes, it used to be singular, MTP. I used to call it the North Star. But when I was using the word the North Star in Jakarta, I was told that we would not be able to see North Star in Jakarta. And one person asked me if it would be okay for us to look for another star that's around in the southern hemisphere. But anyhow, well, I decided not to use the word non-star anymore because I felt ashamed. And a North Star is sort of like a totalitarianism because everyone is asked to face the same direction. Therefore, instead, I decided that it would be better to use the plural to make people look for their own massive transformative purpose that's fit for themselves. I sometimes conduct a daydream session. I ask people to remove all the restriction and ask them to look for something that they look for. Well, please come and think about the 10x future. Well, everyone struggles to think about the vision of the future, ideal future. And senior people and those who stay in a company for a long time face difficulty. But when it comes to the young generation people or those who join the company in the mid-career, and the young ones tend to draw something fun, but that's only the dream, daydream, pipe dream. So now what comes more important is what you see at the left. So after I say to the people that they have to draw up the future of the dream, I ask them to take a look at the mirror. I say to them that you are not doing what they want to do, what they would like to strive to be. And they always respond that the reality is not that easy. What I always hear is that we do not have enough money, not enough people. But if that really is the reason, then you won't be able to go towards the dream. I say to them that they should give up their pipe dream, but they will say, no, we really want to realize the dream. The people comes out with all sorts of excuses. But I tell them, why is it that you are facing this miserable situation? Because there has to be means for you to realize the vision in future. So actually, when you conduct a time analysis, you'll find that 90% of your job is really the bullshit jobs. Of course, you are engaged in those jobs because you are told to do so by the company or the government. You have to create the documents. But the meeting really is the most evil bullshit jobs. It's really the crime. It takes up the time of the people. Why is it that they have to do that? Well, the writing the minutes of the meetings, I think you have to let the chat GPT handle that. I say to them that they shouldn't even have the meetings. And actually, by eliminating those 90% of their time, you would be able to have more time, 10x time, to do the things that you need to do, and you'll be able to see the true disease that you have. And here you see three typical diseases that we often find in the companies. One, the symptom that you believe that you are doing things, but you really not. And the speed and scale are not there, but you think that you are doing what you're supposed to do. That's the most vicious disease. In Japan, there are many companies that have this disease. Maybe you might, those of you who are in the Silicon Valley may think that Japanese companies are walking towards the backwards. Another disease is the thousand flowers disease at Google. Back when they used to be the venture company, it used to have this disease. They have 80-20 rule now. Well, out of the 5 days of the week, they are allowed to spend one day for anything that they would like to do. They would have to do their job efficiently, but they can spend the rest of the one remaining day for whatever they would like to do. And they were actually true to the rules. They thought that they would be able to bloom 1,000 flowers, but actually that didn't work. Now they decided that there would be no more 1,000 flowers, but 20% is around. They are allowed to do, but it has to be moonshot. They are asked to look for the kind of things that can turn around the world.
Recently, Tesla is aiming for the Mars, so rather than moonshot, maybe they call it Mars shot. But they need to do something big. And when I talk to young people working at Google, they say this is why they're at Google, not because they want to do search, but because they have moonshot projects. And if they're successful, then they can be upgraded to Google X. And that's why they want to work at Google. That is the joy of Google. That is going beyond the 1,000 flowers. In Japan, we call this the POC disease, proof of concept disease. You just do many POCs, and then that's it. I was asked by the Cabinet Office recently to investigate what happened to Japanese government POCs. Nothing happened to them. It's a waste of taxpayer money. So doing POC and not converting that into business, that's a waste of time. And there are many companies who have caught this disease, POC disease. And this is just an excuse. They're not doing anything. And the third way is the silo disease. There could be horizontal silos, but also vertical silos. In the worst case, there could be new business lines that are separated completely into like a different island, different set apart from the organization. And then there is no way for such a new business to flower. But the fact that we have this disease may be good because disease can be cured, which means that maybe there is a possibility for us to grow 10x. So if we didn't have any disease and we were in this state, then it's hopeless. But we now have these different disease, which is also an opportunity for us to significantly transform our business. And then the third point here is the direction of transformation. So rather than going directly toward the vision, the purpose where you want to go, we need to first focus on curing the disease. So the purpose, that's the trigger. It's not a pie in the sky. It's how we need to transform the status quo in order to come closer to those purpose and vision. And that is the role of these dreams. So we come to this left-hand picture. When we tried this out, this is what happens. purpose is a dream for the future. You can say anything. You can dream anything. So I have changed my title from Uncle Purpose to Uncle Practice. Now, it's very difficult to connect the future to today. And when we go into practice, the purpose becomes meaningless because it's so far in the future. It's so different from the status quo. When you try to do practice, purpose does not help. What we need is principle, meaning that within the practice, you encounter many gray areas, and you need a principle in order to make decisions. Just having this beautiful future vision doesn't help in those decision making. And principle comes from ethics. So ethics becomes principle, and then through principle, or the practice can be implemented, and gradually you get closer and closer to the purpose. Now, in order to carry this out, there are three Qs, the three quotient that is required for leaders. We often talk about IQ and EQ. There is the logos and the pathos, logic and emotion, or head and heart. But these two are not enough. Today's theme requires JQ. JQ's J is judgment quotient. What is the quotient for judgment? So it's like beauty and truth and goodness. So truth is truth and beauty is beauty, but it is the justice that is difficult because it's very difficult to judge what is good. So in the days of Aristotle, he talked about the common good. But this is only for the people of Greece. And it doesn't include slaves. It doesn't include people of other religion. And Michael Sandel, I'm sure that you're a big fan of him, is doing these classes in Harvard. And recently, he had students from Harvard, from the Tsinghua University of China, and University of Tokyo students in Tokyo. And even though they have the same theme, very different judgments are given by the students from the US, China, and Japan. And of course, that is the case. People make different decisions, and the community good is only within the community. It's different across communities. But that is also why our society is so divided. Now, rather than trying to create a common good, we need to think about how we can build a common empathy. Because as humans, even if we don't have the same beliefs, we can still find empathy within ourselves. And Michael Gabriel, he's a German philosopher who has written books on ethical capitalism recently. I have been speaking to him a lot recently, and he agreed with me. Empathy. Humans can have empathy. Rather than trying to find a common equator, we should try to find empathy. And now I come to the last part of my presentation. How do we create this JQ? Now we come to the 3S. So if I double click here, the 3S is systemic, or spiral, and spiritual. These three, system, spiral, and spiritual, we need to enhance all of this. System is easy. It's wholeness, being able to see the entire picture. But these systems are very complex. There are many causal loops. And being able to understand that structure is necessary. It's not just a causal relationship between A and B. It's not a simple logic. It's very complex. And so that's a system thinking. The next is spiral thinking. This is a time. It's not an exponential curve. It's not linear. You go back and forth. But if you just go back and forth in the same place, it's a circle. But it's a spiral, which means that gradually you are evolving to a different stage. So we come from the third dimension, fourth dimension, time, and then the fifth dimension. What is the fifth dimension? That is the spiritual thinking, which is like the belief that I talked about earlier. So spirit is going to support you. It's going to help you determine which direction to go. Have you ever experienced something like this? Something like a spirit whispering in your ear that this is the correct path. And perhaps you'll discuss more of this in Kyoto. In the Zen temples, it is this spiritual thinking that they are trying to enhance. I also teach in Kyoto, and I am a student at these Zen temples. So as ethical leaders, you need system thinking, spiral thinking, and spiritual thinking. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.